I'm Mateo from Semper Metallum, and today I am here with Jono from the band Bloom. Jono, how about you introduce yourself?
Hey, what's up? I'm Jono Hawkey. I play in a band called Bloom. I'm the vocalist. Happy to be here. Happy to chat.
Awesome. So you have a brand new album dropping this month, actually, called Maybe in Another Life. How about you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Maybe Another Life is our debut record coming out on Feb 16th. I mean, it's our debut, so a lot of time and energy has gone into it. We started working on it all the way back in 2022. So it's really cool to finally kind of be at the end of the release, and we're super excited to share it with everyone. It's kind of pushing the extremes of the sound that we've developed. We've got stuff that's heavier than stuff we've written before, and we've got stuff that's softer. And we've released a couple singles from it so far that have kind of showcase both those ends of the spectrum. And we're just really excited for people to be able to hear the whole concept of the record instead of just the little sort of singles and stuff we've released so far.
So I've heard the record several times now. It's really, really good. I think it's one of the most cohesive projects so far this year, both musically and lyrically. And I know there's kind of like a loose concept like behind the album. So how about you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so since Bloom has begun, we've kind of written around a concept, or we've gone into a release with an idea in mind of the narrative that we want to tell. And I think the lyrics and instrumentally, that's always at the forefront of combining those two and really being able to bounce different elements off each other to convey an emotion or a plot point of the, so to speak, narrative. So Maybe in Another Life is a concept record about a protagonist who at the beginning of the record is plagued and taunted by this idea of, if I did something differently, then maybe this outcome wouldn't have happened, or maybe I'd be happier if I didn't do this, or this mistake, or this ending of a relationship. And the first sort of half of the album kind of tells a story through different experiences. And then on the back end of the album, the protagonist sort of reaches a breaking point, and the curtain drops, and there's this sort of unveiling of without, I guess, spoiling it too much, the kind of coming down to the problem being with the protagonist and their state of mind and how they were viewing things. And I think the title of the album, Maybe in Another Life, kind of captures that whole sentiment of the whole album really well.
Yeah, I agree. It's like the perfect sentence to describe just the theme and overall arc of the record.
We had the album title locked in before really any of the lyrics or even the narrative. I remember it was Jared who sort of came to the table and was like, "Hey, what do you guys think about doing an album just about this? About this whole." Because it's a thought that I think is pretty worldwide of hanging on to sort of moments and replaying them in your head. And I think, before we'd even started writing for the album, we kind of knew that, hey, this is going to be the idea, and how can we flesh that out?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really interesting that you already had the title and you decided to write an entire album around that. You don't see that very often. I was actually going to lead into one of the questions I had was, with the concept, do you create the concept first, or do you just start writing and then just kind of the concept, there gradually becomes a concept? But in this case, I guess there was already a concept.
Yeah, for this case, our last full release was In Passing, and that was written about the loss of my granddad, which was a very real and, it happened at a time where we were writing music and those two things came together. So there was almost a bit of internal pressure for this next release of, okay, well, what do we write about? We've written about the loss of a family member. What's something that we can speak to that's important and we want people to be able to relate to? And that idea, like I said, Maybe in Another Life, was something that was at the forefront of all of our minds at the time. It was also, coming out of the pandemic that we started writing it. And I think a lot of people at that time were very much like, if this never happened, then I would have done this. So yeah, I think concept is really important to us, and we don't really start writing seriously until we kind of know what we want the bigger picture to look like. We're big sort of album listeners, people put on track one, listen to it all the way through to the end. So I think it's really important. It's one of our sort of North Stars of the band is making sure that what we're releasing is a complete cohesive body of work.
And I think that that sets you guys apart from a lot of other bands in that, because there's a lot of bands you listen to the records and it's more of a compilation of songs, versus with you guys, everything you do is very cohesive. And with In Passing, I first discovered y'all like shortly after that EP dropped, actually. I just remember being really surprised about how cohesive everything was, both musically and narratively. Also, your lyric writing is just like really poetic, and I think that also is even improved even more so on the new record, especially just with some of the more abstract concepts, but also even with the more realistic like
we
storytelling.
collaborate on so much now. Like obviously in Passing was kind of a unique circumstance because that was something that happened to me, but even still in the room, everyone's bouncing ideas off each other. With this album, there was a conscious effort to, you know, it's not one person's story. It's how do we all view this concept? And because we were so locked in on the concept from the start, it led to some really cool like idea generation and ways that we could express things without being so literal about it.
Yeah.
Especially with a concept that's not like it's not a physical thing. It's not a true experience. It's sort of more of a thought. We were able to kind of push the boundaries a little bit. So lyrically, we're all super stoked with how Maybe in Another Life came out. And I think it was sort of the first time that we all really put our heads together to write, as opposed to either myself or another member doing heavy lifting on a song and people throwing ideas in. Pretty much everything that was written for that album was written as a collective, as a collaborative effort.
That's awesome. You don't see that super often with just everyone pitching in, especially just on the lyric and songwriting aspect of it. How important is honest and authentic songwriting to your band, like as you're writing the song? Because that's, at least to me, that's one thing that's always stuck out about your music, is it's very authentic and it's very honest and emotional and raw in the songwriting, and I've always really appreciated that.
Like you nailed it. So that to me, at least, when I'm thinking about lyrics, when I'm thinking about what I want to say, it always boils down to being literal and honest and authentic. One of my sort of biggest influences into getting into the genre and starting a band is Touche Amore. Their records, the way Jeremy sort of writes Stage 4 is a huge influence to how In Passing was written, where it's very much literal how it happened. You can almost, close your eyes and imagine in that situation. And I think that is something very ingrained in me when it comes to writing lyrics, is I want everything to be honest, and I want the listener to be able to actually, read through the lyrics and have a very clear play-by-play of what is unfolding. Massive props to people that can write these, very abstract and poetic and metaphorical stuff. That's just not how my brain works. When I come to writing music, I kind of want to write it in a way that it feels almost like you're reading someone's experience from start to end.
Yeah, and one thing I remember noticing back, like the first time I listened to In Passing, and then even still today, like there's a very distinct set of visualizations that I get when I'm hearing that record. Just from every line, just the storytelling, just quite literally tells a story, and it's like a visual story as much as it is just a written story. And I think that you kind of have that same concept on a lot of the songs on Maybe Another Life as well.
Yeah, I think in the same way that we kind of pushed the extremes with the actual instrumentation and how we were writing the songs, I think lyrically, because that concept led itself into a few more different avenues, we were able to sort of write stuff that was a little bit more in that abstract, like songs like An Exit and songs like Carve Yourself Into My Lungs don't have a very, they're not written the same way, say like The Service or Daylight is, but I think at their core you can still listen to them and they still have a sort of a Bloom 100%, sound and feel 100%. To the lyrics to them. Yeah.
So since we are on the topic of the lyrics of the record, is there any specific songs that like you really want to share an important message in, just out of the track list for Maybe Another Life?
The first two that come to mind is the ending of the last song on the album. It kind of goes into so Through the Threshold, Beyond the Bend is the climax of the album. It's sort of the realization moment for our protagonist. And I think it's sort of delivered in like a spoken word way. And I think that's really impactful. I really like how that sums up the album. The other one that I wouldn't say it's a message, but one that I'm most excited for people to hear. The song An Exit, so the song just before the last song, is the bones of that song are based off a single, like one of our first songs called Phantom Pain off our very first EP. And lyrically, we took a lot of the same lyrics that we used in that song and repackaged them in a different way.
That's really cool.
yeah, it's something that happened in the studio, and it was just like too good to be true. So yeah, instrumentally and lyrically, the bones of that song are based off one of our first songs, like 2018 sort of release songs. And I think for people who are fans of the band, who have been with us for a while, will hear that, and it kind of harkens back to, and I'm super stoked to be able to have done a song that sort of references older material. It's something I've wanted to do for ages, and I'm glad we got to make it work.
Yeah, that's so cool. So shifting towards more of like the musical side of things, you guys are, I think you've branded yourself as melodic hardcore in the past, but I feel like you kind of just stepped out of that box a little bit for some of the tracks on the new record, especially on songs like You and I, which I really like, and my favorite song on the record, Fragments of a Dream. They still have that post-hardcore, melodic hardcore sort of feel, but they add more ambient elements and just kind of stick out to me, especially with that. How was the writing for this album a bit different instrumentally than it was in the past?
So our writing process has remained pretty much the same. The way that it kind of comes down is Ollie, the guitarist, or even Jared will start just shitting out ideas, whether it's a fully fledged song, whether it is a riff, whether it's a section of a thing, and it gets saved into the Dropbox. We have a producer that we work with down in Melbourne. We've worked with him since Cold. He's sort of integral to the writing process. And before production begins of the album or whatever it is we're recording, we will sit there and we will all listen to the 30, 40 odd files that are in the Dropbox and select the bits that either resonate with us or we think there's more that can be expanded on there. Sometimes it's fully written songs. You and I especially was something that Ollie had come to the table with and been like, hey, I want to do a song that's kind of like not a Bloom song. Like I want to do something that's more of that movements or like post-hardcore sort of stuff, because that's what I've been listening to and I really like it. And all of us who are on board with it.
That's been like my top genre, I feel like, this past year.
It's really cool that it's sort of it's on a lot of people's radars recently, and I think it's a really cool sound. And the choice to not add any screaming to that song was like a very conscious decision as well. I think we kind of went, if we're going to lean into this sound more, then we should just scrap the screaming part altogether and do it as a song, like something you'd hear on the radio sort of thing, because this is outside of Bloom. Like we don't listen to a ton of heavy music these days. I would say our influences have always been like widely varied. I listen to a bunch of jazz. So it's very it's cool to kind of do a song that doesn't necessarily feel like a Bloom song. And yeah, for the writing of that one, that was very much, we came with a full song, but a song like Fragments was an idea that kind of got fleshed out in the studio and kind of came together nicely.
That's awesome. I feel like a lot of bands in your kind of scene and genre tend to write the same song over and over and over. I thought it was really cool just to hear just the variety of sounds you guys kind of explore on this record and adding different elements and not being afraid to have a song without screams and vice versa and whatever.
Yeah.
There's a good balance of both really heavy and really melodic on the record, and I really appreciate that.
I think at our roots, we're still a melodic hardcore band, but I think we're pushing the metalcore and post-hardcore sides of that a lot. I've seen a lot of people sort of referencing with the first couple of singles, sort of that early metalcore sound. And it's cool that we've kind of branched out of, whereas, you know, songs off In Passing were kind of melodic hardcore songs by nature. Yeah. But I think with this album, there's something for people who like that sound, and there's something for people who like softer, and there's stuff for people who like heavier. So I think we're all super proud of the end product. It definitely took a really long time to get it to the point that it is at now. But yeah, we're super stoked that people are sort of digging the fact that we've pushed wider in our influences and our songwriting than we have before.
You mentioned that taking a long time. I'm kind of curious, because Sink in the Soil, the track that you released a couple of years ago, is not on this record, but it was released the same year that you guys started writing this record. Was that kind of like you just testing the waters a bit with kind of a sound direction or a style change slightly? Or was it just kind of just a process where it's just like, oh, we have this song, but it's not quite In Passing, but it's not quite where we want to be yet with the next record?
The honest answer to it was we needed to put a song out. We were in the middle of COVID, and especially in Australia, we kind of kept going through lockdown, not lockdown, and a bunch of stuff. And all these different waves. And we kind of were just like, we need to put out a song. We need to get something out. And I don't think there was a lot of foresight at the time when we were writing and recording it of what is this song going to be standalone? Is it going to be part of a bigger picture? But we knew that we kind of wanted to do something a little bit grittier and heavier than what was on In Passing. I think it was just sort of influence of our times. We kind of wanted to be a little bit more pissed off. And Sing to the
Understandable.
Soil is really fun. Yeah. It's a really fun song to play live, but I don't think at any point we thought that it would necessarily fit on the album. Like I said before, like the album, we decided on the concept and we wrote to that concept. And I think for us to shoehorn Sink Into the Soil in there, while like sonically and lyrically, it could fit to it. I think it would almost be doing a disservice to the rest of the record that was written for that concept.
It was really so much longer before the album actually dropped, so I feel like it just kind of makes more sense just to have it as a standalone anyway. But I was curious, since you mentioned it.
Yeah, it was honestly around the same time that song came out that we headed down to start pre-production on the record, and it's been a long time coming, but stoked that we're at the end of the tunnel nearly.
And also with this record, you guys signed with Pure Noise, which is an insane label, like so many just incredible artists. What was it like working on them with this release compared to past? Like, just
it's sort of full credit to our team for making that happen. Signing to Pure Noise has been one of those fever dream long shot goals for us for since the band started. Really, we wanted the album to be a big thing, and our manager M sort of started putting feelers out with Pure Noise around the start of last year. So we sort of came to them and we sent them through the album, and then we had a series of conversations with them, and they kind of were on board right from the get-go. They dug the album. They really liked the direction that we were going in, and they wanted to pick up some more Australian bands for their roster. And I think we were kind of in the right place at the right time, sort of ready to go with an album and keen to tour and excited to keep evolving the band. And we're super fortunate to be a band that's on their roster because, like you said, they've got a bunch of really big and really established and sort of at the forefront of the genre. So we're just super ecstatic to be a part of that, and we're super excited to see what happens with the next album. Obviously, we came to them with maybe another Life already written, but whatever's next, we'll kind of get some of their input on as well. So we're excited to see what that looks like come album 2.
That's super sick. I always love seeing like bands that I find when they're like really small and just kind of getting on the map and then getting these bigger opportunities and signing and all that stuff. It's always really cool to see. Also, shortly after the release of this record, you guys are going on tour with Era and Gnosis in Japan for the first time. What do you think about touring in Japan? I mean, that's pretty crazy.
So I thought Japan would be a lot further away than it is in terms of where we're touring. I've never been. A couple of our like Andrew and Jack, who play in the band, have both been to Japan and loved it, and the rest of us have never been, but would love to go. And we got offered it, and it was like a no-brainer. We didn't care how much flights were going to be. We didn't care about any of that. It was, we get to play 3 shows in Japan with, a band that is going to sell a lot of tickets. We get to come along for the ride. There was no way that we were saying no to that. We were super fortunate to get that offer. It's a crazy, like we've never really done a proper international show before. We've played shows in New Zealand, but that's kind of just like an extension of Australia. Sorry. Like a proper international show. And that's in less than 20 days now. So really crazy. It's the first show in Japan is 2 days after the album comes out. So could not be more excited.
I play guitar, so I've played in like live with bands and stuff before. And it's just like, I've only played like tiny, like local stuff. So just the idea of, I get to go on tour in another country, and especially when you've never done it before. I mean, that's just an unreal feeling.
Crazy. I've been learning Japanese for the last month. It's I'm doing what I can.
Using Duolingo?
Absolutely. I'm on like a 20-day streak. We're doing well.
My editor in here is probably going to edit the Duolingo bird somewhere in here now.
Perfect.
So you guys also recently just supported Thornhill and Holding Absence in Australia. So what was that like, and what was the best show or tour you've ever been on, and why was it so special to you?
Thornhill Holding Absence, love those gentlemen. We've toured with Thornhill before, and we've toured with Holding Absence before. So it was really cool to kind of get into a tour where the ice had already been broken. It was kind of like a reunion of friends more so than a meeting of strangers. That tour was awesome. And for Thornhill as well, like the venues they played in Australia were so much bigger than the first time we played with them. So it was really cool to see their growth as well. The highlight of that tour was we played a venue called The Forum, which is down here in Melbourne. It's about a 2,000 capacity old theatre music hall thing. And I've seen a bunch of bands there before, sort of just as a punter, as someone who's going to see a show there. So it was really cool to kind of be on the other side of that. As for the best tour memory, I think my favorite tour we've ever done is still the first one. Our first tour was back in 2020. 2020, 21, something like that. It was with Thornhill, and it was a regional tour. So we're playing, pubs in these regional cities in Australia. And I think that was 20, 25 shows. And that was the first time that we'd been exposed to touring or, doing shows back to back. That to me is, I look back on with a lot of nostalgia and sort of, rose tinted glasses in a way, because it was the first time doing it. And it was just so special to be all together as a band and driving stupid long distances and playing some little small dive bars. And it really got me kind of hooked on the idea of touring full time and doing it as a job. And I think I always look back on that tour as sort of a turning point of, now that we've done it and we've done, a decently sized tour, I want to do more.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one thing I also wanted to talk about with the record was the visuals. I am really big on graphic design and visuals. So I was just curious, like, it felt like there was a very specific visual identity you guys were trying to establish with Maybe in Another Life that very much matches, I feel like, just the tone of the record. Was there like any intentionality with like when you were getting the visuals, put together and everything? Was there like intentionality behind the imagery and just the colors and everything?
Yeah. When you work on an album for 2 years, no stone gets left unturned. So I'm a graphic designer outside of screaming. And I guess even everyone in the band, we kind of wanted to go into it with a very complete picture. We wanted to create something where every element was looked at and everything that was going into that record was precise and had meaning behind it, down to things like the color palette and the album artwork. I think captures that idea of the title of the album, and I think everything came from that. So the colors of that sort of tealy blue has this euphoric and melancholy sort of feeling to it. The use of like a lot of noise and grain and texture has like the haziness of a memory or like distress. And a lot of those things were really intentional. We have worked with a videographer and someone who does a lot of the visual stuff for us for the better half of 2 years now, named Jack Fontes. And he came on board with this record sort of right as it was being made. And we were pretty clear with how we wanted to represent the record. And a lot of the stuff that he's done towards that record has really benefited and kind of excelled that image. Like the video and the colors used in You and I are almost completely opposite to the wider record, because that song is meant to feel more bittersweet and less of that negative spiral. So it made sense to make the colors for that almost the inverse of the rest of the record. So it's very cool that you've picked up on a bit of that sort of stuff and it's been recognized, because it was a lot of conversations, and it was a lot of like really boring conversations as well. How can we best represent this feeling or all that sort of stuff. And I'm really glad that we were able to, I guess the nice part of 2 years to make a record is that you have the time to really iron out every single detail.
Yeah, I mean, just the color palette alone, I just felt like just matched the tone just with that melancholic, like you said, just that feel and just the look that you guys captured just really encapsulates the record perfectly, I think.
Hell yeah.
So before we go, is there anything you want to mention or plug or anything aside from the record dropping on February 16th?
Pre-order the record. pick up some merch. We've got plans to do international stuff this year, so hopefully we'll be coming to a place near you that we'll be able to announce soon. But yeah, we're super excited to spend as much time as we can playing this record in front of as many people as we can. So hopefully we will get to do that this year. If not, it'll be soon.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And
thanks for having me.
Go stream the record when it's out.
Wait, thanks.